By the time he reached the blue bay, he was feeling a lot better. He knew it was the right place because the surrounding hills were blue, and the sea was blue, and the sky was blue. Also, there was a small stunted signpost nearby, growing crookedly between two rocks, and on it there said in blue letters, "This is the Blue Bay." The tide was out when he got there. Indeed, it was so far out that it might well need the help of a signpost itself to get back. It had left behind it, as a pledge perhaps, a mile or more of ribbed sand. And stranded right in the middle of this sand there was a whale. If you think it was anything other than a blue whale, you have not been following my story as closely as you should. Agnes approached the whale circumspectly, which means that he stopped about 50 feet away. He could see that it had worn a hollow in the sand by threshing around. When it saw him, it shouted, "Help!" in a tiny squeaky voice, whales having very small throats. "What seems to be the trouble, whale?" inquired Agnes. "The trouble, giant," replied the whale, "is that I fell asleep on a sandbank in the middle of the bay. It was only a baby sandbank then, but by the time I woke up it had grown up. I am stranded. Unless I can get back to the water soon, this hot white sun will shrivel my tender skin, which is used only to the coolness and moistness and greenness of the deep sea. I shall die. But what can I do? I cannot swim over the sand, and I have neither legs to walk with nor wings to fly." It was plain that he spoke the truth, for already on his blue back 2 or 3 blisters were beginning to form. "It seems to me," remarked Agnes, "that you creatures aren't quite as superior as Goldentop is always saying you are. I may be only a giant, but at least I would never get stuck in the middle of a flat piece of land. I have legs." "Goldentop is a snob," said the whale. "It comes of continually looking down on the rest of the world. And as for legs, unless they are put to the service of the community, they remain a private luxury." "You are a heavy weight," Agnes told him, "even for me. But I think that with the help of my legs and arms, I might just be able to pull you as far as the water's edge." He caught hold of the whale's tail and set to work. After a long hard struggle he managed to get it into the shallows, and with a flick of its powerful body it did the rest. It was so happy to be back where it belonged that it turned 3 underwater cartwheels in succession. "Look at me, giant!" it shouted when it re-emerged. "Where are your legs now? Can you swim like this?" "I'm afraid I'm not very much of a swimmer," replied Agnes. "If I were, I might swim across to the island of Alva, for on it there lives a giantess." "I know," said the whale. "Have you seen her?" Agnes asked. "I have seen her," the whale agreed, "and heard her too." "I am going to ask her to marry me," Agnes informed him. "Have you seen her?" inquired the whale. "No," replied Agnes. "Why do you ask?" "Never mind," the whale answered. "But I owe my life to you, and if you truly wish to go there, I will help you. Wade into the water and catch hold of my tail." "It's very kind of you," Agnes told him, "but there's one more snag. My mother told me just before she died never to go into the sea." "And died, I suppose," asked the whale, "before she had time to say why?" Agnes nodded. "That's the trouble with death," the whale continued. "He always comes when you're in the middle of something, even if it's only drawing breath. Well, it's up to you whether you want to take a chance or not. I'll give you 5 minutes to make up your mind." The whale set off on a slow tour round the bay, or what was left of it. Agnes pondered. What was the mysterious saltwater fate that lay in store for giants? Was it some monster of the deep? Something big enough to swallow even him? And whatever the fate was, could it be any worse than loneliness? The sea looked lovely. Surely nothing too terrible could happen to him if he ventured in. There was the giantess too, to think about, on her island just below the horizon. Very likely she was waiting impatiently for just such a one as he was. He decided to take the risk. "I'm going to the island," he shouted to the whale. "I'm ready now." They began their voyage, with Agnes grasping the tail of his new friend and being towed through the water. Their progress, to be sure, was slow, for a giant is a considerable burden even for a whale. But the sun shone, the sea remained peaceful, no monsters appeared, and one by one the miles slid past beneath them. Gradually they began to go a little faster. Agnes noticed this. "You're getting used to me," he called. "I expect that's it," the whale agreed. On they went a mile or two farther, and still the sea unrolled quietly before them like a great blue carpet. Their speed increased a little more. Agnes noticed this as well. "Wonderful!" he shouted. "You're going faster than ever." "I'm not sure that I am," the whale said. "There's something very strange going on. I don't understand it at all." He sounded worried. On they went again. Faster and still faster. Agnes noticed that his hands didn't grasp the whale's tail as easily as they had when he started. "That's because of the speed," he told himself, but almost as soon as he said it, he knew it wasn't true. His mother's warning sounded again in his ears. "Don't go into the salt water, Agnes." And suddenly he realized what she had meant. He was slowly shrinking. What could he do? He called out once more to his friend the whale, telling it what was happening. "Yes, I thought you must be getting smaller," the whale admitted, "but I was afraid to say anything in case you dropped off through shock." "Should we turn back?" asked Agnes. "We're there," replied the whale. Sure enough, the island loomed ahead, a large, well-wooded one, with the tallest tower that Agnes had ever seen soaring above the treetops. "That'll be the giantess's tower, I suppose," thought Agnes. The island grew nearer and nearer, and presently a great booming voice thundered out across the water. "I am a giant, a female giant, my nature bold and strong. My eyes are quick, my club is thick, my arms are extra long. My voice is thunderously large, a wondrous voice to hear, and when I shout and stamp about, the echoes take a year. My towering height is something else of which I'm very proud. I scrape the sky when I pass by and drink from every cloud." A tailor who was measuring me and swore he had the knack, set off in haste to chalk my waist and hasn't yet come back. My future husband, I insist, must be more huge than me, or with one bound I'll swing him around and hurl him out to sea. "Grammar never was her strong point," said the whale, "but she sounds in excellent form today." Agnes had listened in trepidation to the great voice, and to the awesome catalogue of attributes it had listed. He had tried to give himself courage by allowing 10% off the list for the usual giant's exaggeration, but even if she were only half of what she claimed, the giantess must be a formidable woman indeed. Somehow it was difficult to imagine her darning socks. And apart from that, there was the worrying discovery he had made in the sea just now. How much had he shrunk? The whale glided into the shallow water of the creek. Agnes released his hold, waded ashore, and turned to face his friend. "How much have I lost?" he inquired anxiously. "A lot," replied the whale, surveying him. "An awful lot. You've dwindled by about half." The voice Agnes had heard on approaching the island rolled out again, sounding louder and nearer all the time. He found himself thinking with longing of his home territory and of the clear eyes of Golden Top and the fringed ones of Morag Matheson. "You know, I think perhaps I'll come back some other time," he said to the whale. "I don't feel in the right frame of mind for courting." "It's too late to back out now," the whale told him. "Here she comes." He nodded with his head in the direction of Agnes's right shoulder. "Good luck," he added, and with a flick of his tail he was gone. Agnes turned. The tower he had seen above the treetops was advancing down the beach towards him. It was the giantess. "Good afternoon," said Agnes politely, the occasion obviously being one that called for politeness. The giantess said nothing, but she stooped suddenly and her huge hand shot out. Before he realized what she was about, she had grasped him by the waist and swung him up to face level. "Agnes McCaskill is my name," said Agnes hurriedly. "I'm a giant. At least I was this morning. I'm from the mainland. I have quite a good little territory over there. Lots of butter and eggs and vegetables and that sort of thing. More than enough for two. I'm looking for a wife, I think. Will you marry me?" The giantess listened to this recital in complete silence. When it was finished, she spoke just one word. "Cheek," she said. The hand that grasped Agnes drew back quickly and then shot forward. He found himself flying out over the sea in a huge tumbling curve that arched slowly down toward the waves. "Goodbye, world," he thought. "Goodbye." And splash he hit the water. But before he could sink, there beside him was the whale. "You landed just about where I thought you would," he said to Agnes. "Hang on and I'll have you back at the Blue Bay in no time." Agnes spat out a mouthful of salt water. "If I shrink as much on the way back as I did when I came here," he said, "there'll be nothing left of me." "I'll go extra specially fast," the whale promised. And so he did. He tore through the water at such a rate that Agnes had to hold on with all his strength. Even so, he felt himself shrinking so much smaller that his clothes began to fall off. He had to clutch them desperately. When they landed in the Blue Bay, they went through the same routine as at the island. "How much have I lost this time?" Agnes asked, after he had waded ashore. The whale looked him over carefully. "Well, not as much as last time," he answered, "but still quite a lot. You're about ordinary sized now. I shouldn't try it again." "Don't worry," Agnes told him. "It's dry land for me from now on. Dry land and a bit more reverence for the wisdom of mothers. Thanks for rescuing me." "At least you can say one thing," said the whale. "What's that?" asked Agnes. "You're not the first man to shrink from courtship," the whale answered. He dived under the water and vanished. Agnes made his way home as quickly as he could, and the first person he went to see was Morag. He found her spinning and singing as before, but more slowly and sadly than she used to. "It's me," he shouted when he reached her. "I'm back." "Agnes," cried Morag, "I recognize your voice, but where are you?" She was so busy craning her neck skyward that she failed to notice him standing beside her. "I'm down here," he told her. "The salt water shrank me. I'm just about your size now." "So you are," she agreed. Her eyes dropped down from the clouds, rested on him briefly, and kept on dropping till her gaze was fixed on the ground. "Will you marry me, Morag?" he asked. "Yes, I will," she replied. So they got married, and lived as happily as two people in love might reasonably expect to live. They had 3 ordinary-sized children, 2 girls and a boy, none of whom could ever be persuaded to go near the sea. Agnes stopped being lonely.